Alright guys, today we're going to go over this guy, Galazeth Prismari. Now, this is a 3/4 flyer Elder Dragon, and when it enters the battlefield, you're going to create a treasure token. But that's not all. All the artifacts that you control can also tap to add 1 mana of any color, but you can only cast instants and sorceries with that mana. Now, my immediate thought is to make a treasure deck with this. But I also want to make a deck that can just make a lot of artifacts and then use those artifacts to like capitalize on a big X spell or maybe some other alternate win condition that relies on you having a lot of artifacts. We'll see how it goes. Now let's get on to the deck tech. Alright guys, so this was a pretty fun deck to make. I found out that there's really a lot of different directions that you can take this in, and like really that's not a big surprise after you read this guy, but look forward to making this deck again in some different directions in the future, but let's see how I do my first time. Here we go. So yeah, just made this deck. It's with Galazeth Prismari, and let's go through it. I'm going to go through each of the cards and why I chose them. Let's go for the lands first. Academy Ruins, just to get artifacts back. That's going to be the same as Buried Ruin. I mean, they're essentially the same card in this deck. Cascade Bluffs, just your typical Izzet, Fixing, Command Beacon. I bet this guy's gonna get a lot of hate, so this is to help with that commander tax. Plus you want to cast this guy a lot to get all those treasure tokens. Command Tower and just more mana fixing. I threw in the 3 artifact lands that I have just to add to my artifacts count. You'll see with some more cards later, the amount of artifacts I have will matter. More card draw, mana fixing, card draw, makes more guys, mana fixing, makes guys, the artifact. This gains me life because of the artifacts, and also I think lets me search for one. Got the islands and mountains. This to help fix my draws. This for hopefully when I have a bunch of cards in my hand. Mana fixing, artifact, mana fixing, mana fixing, mana fixing, mana fixing. That's Steam Instance. Alright, instance. So instants and sorceries are an interesting aspect of this deck because the artifacts, I should go over the commander, flying when he enters the battlefield, make a treasure token, and then artifacts you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, but you can only spend that mana to cast instants and sorceries. So my thought for this deck was make as many artifacts as I can and then have some like really good instants and sorcery payoffs. I found when I was making this that there's a lot of instants and sorceries that have come out in the past that make treasures and food tokens, clues, but they're overcosted. But this deck gets around that because the artifacts that those spells are making will then have your other overcosted spells cost less. So, for instance, this makes you 3 clue tokens, which will then make this one cost less. This one would then cost 1, and then give you another treasure, and then like that keeps going. What breaks like the parity is that usually with these guys, those tokens go away right away, but with this commander, they stay on the battlefield, so you can just use them again and like invest your mana into your next spells that you'll be casting. So we got a counter spell that makes some, a bounce spell that makes some. We'll come back to that in a sec. Another counter spell that makes them, and then another bounce spell that makes them. We also have Prismari's commands to just give you some more like utility. Pretty much all these things we can use. This guy's fun for the second ability. You choose an artifact you control, and then each other artifact you control becomes a copy of that. There's some really good payoffs in this deck, like Wormcoil Engine, where you can make a bunch of treasure tokens, hit the engine, and then all of your stuff becomes like 6/6s with Death Touch and Lifelink. Those are the instants. The Planeswalkers, we're just running all three Saheelis. They all three kind of do different variants of each other. Basically, you're gonna make a bunch of servos, and they're gonna help you cast stuff. All good stuff. Creatures. This guy, I liked creatures that could like make you more artifact tokens throughout the game. So stuff like this, where every time this creature attacks, you're gonna make a treasure token. I like that stuff. Plus, Hasty Body, you can sacrifice the treasures to buff it up when it connects. This guy is fun because I like things that can also repeatedly make copies of target artifacts, and you can abuse like scary stuff like the Wormcoil Engine. The Extortionist, it just steal all your other people's treasures and stuff. Fairy Artisan, I'm a sucker for copy spells, and then this one also makes a artifact of it. This guy flips over to, so this target creature control, so you end up paying that, and then becomes this land, which can then just like keep pumping out artifacts, which is like the whole thing you're trying to do. Alright, should be back now. Start back over at the creatures. We were here. Auto include, when it attacks or becomes the target, you make a treasure, and then treasures you control sacrifice for 2 mana. Like, duh, you're gonna auto include that. This is one of the win cons. You want to use where's the guy? This guy can help search it out, or you can just draw it naturally. But at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 more artifacts, you win the game. It should be relatively easy for this deck, but we'll find out. Hull Breacher is broken. Again, $30. This is just an easy 1-drop that when it dies makes a treasure, but I can bring it back later. This guy pumps out artifacts like crazy. I already talked about this one. It's another guy that comes in with 2 artifacts, and then he's also going to cost less from your artifacts, because you can use your artifacts to help cast a spell. Each artifact that you tap like goes towards one of the colorless manas of the casting cost of this guy. So kind of like what your commander's doing with instants and sorceries. Pia Nalar and Pia and this one both kind of do similar things, just like utilizing artifacts to do other things, which is another like sub-theme of this deck, kind of like trying to get the most out of them. This one, just because it has Prismari in it, another utility. This one's pretty good utility for when you cast instants and sorceries, you get the treasures, so it kind of works like the opposite. And then this guy also gets really big when you have a lot of artifacts out, which is what we're trying to do. This gives artifacts haste, but also makes artifacts when it comes in. Tago, one of my favorite. All your lands, when they enter, it's basically landfall, make a rock. And the rocks you can sacrifice to deal 2 damage. This is like Wormcoil Engine Part 2. When it dies, splits into 3 versions of itself, each 3 3s, but with the one of the keyword abilities. So
essentially the same as what Wormcoil Engine does. Urza is like the secondary commander of this deck. This is just another cheap way to bring treasures in. This is another utility to use the treasures and artifacts with. All these enchantments, I spent a lot of time looking at, seeing if I wanted to get rid of any of them. Curse of Opulence, kind of a pet card for me. I remember when it first came out. This, I think, will give you a lot of tokens just passively. Another win con in this deck. Throw it on a treasure. If you have a bunch of treasures, then you win the game. And also would then keep making them on the upkeeps. This, you're playing instant sorceries and making artifacts out of them, which then costs your instant sorceries cost less. That's a pretty good win con. Another win con. This guy flips into this, which is going to add a bunch of mana for all the artifacts you control. This is going to make you a ton of artifacts passively again, and also things attack, draw you cards. Another one that makes artifacts when you cast instant sorceries.